So again, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about multi-channel fundraising and engaging the modern donor with a lot of really exciting tactics. We will cover everything from the annual fund to leadership annual giving to major gifts. We'll talk a lot about higher education, but we're going to talk about broader nonprofit work as well. We have experience doing both with Groundwork Digital. And we're excited to share with you case studies, examples, tactics, mechanisms that you can use in 2019 and beyond to secure a lot more fundraising support. As I said, Groundwork Digital has been around for almost 2 years now. We'll celebrate our anniversary officially in February. We've worked with, I'll just do the numbers real quickly, but well more than a dozen different partners across the nonprofit spectrum, including higher education, healthcare, advocacy organizations, research organizations. We are more focused than ever on a few things, one being video. Video is something that we have expanded considerably even in recent months, growing our team in that area because we've seen how well it works. And we'll show you how well it works in just a bit here throughout the webinar, but also in the major gift space. As a matter of fact, the reason why we launched about 2 years ago was for that very reason, because there weren't too many firms out there that were focused on doing digital strategy to engage major donors. And we saw a real opportunity. So we took it and we had a lot of fun with it. And today we're going to go through a lot of different things, a lot of different tactics, and really hopefully help position you and your fundraising operation to do some things new, to be innovative in the new year and beyond, and ultimately to raise a lot more money without having as much of a financial spend to get to that point of raising a lot more money. So looking at some of the trends, I mentioned video. This is something that, every time I see it, it still shocks me a little bit, but it's a Google study of online video. And then Google found that 57% of everybody who watches an online video will eventually go on to make a gift to the nonprofit that posted that online video. Now take a second to let that sink in. 57%. Now I know that Google owns YouTube, so they have a bit of a vested interest in having a study like this, but let's say this is even 10% accurate. If you put a good video up on a Facebook page, you're sure to get, especially with an ad spend, a few thousand views. I mean, again, this is only 10% accurate. We're talking about dozens, if not hundreds, of new gifts from a single video if you can get people to watch it. So quality video matters. Quality content with a good message matters. Sometimes just content matters, as long as it is something people can see, something they can hear, and something they can understand. This is really cool data from the ThinkView platform. And what ThinkView is, if you're not familiar, it's a technology that latches onto typically a phone program, although it can be used for a lot of different things now, including online giving days. Phone program is, I think, one of the easiest ways to describe its incredible impact, its potential. So what will happen is with ThinkView, if you have the ThinkView platform, you'll have a caller receive a gift or a pledge. And when they do that, then they can turn on kind of a webcam type thing and a PCI compliant sort of phone booth. Computer booth, and they can record from that webcam. They can record a video thanking the donor who just made a pledge. And then they can send that video to the donor in an email. So the donor who just made a pledge to some college student calling them on the phone, or to somebody working for a nonprofit who dialed them up, can then go to their email inbox and immediately see, not just hear from that person, but see in the flesh the person who just convinced them to, hypothetically at least, part with their money in the form of a pledge. Now, that's the webcam version. Pretty rough around the edges, more authentic, a more real feeling video because it was shot on the spot in the moment, sent directly to the donor. The uploaded video, same idea. Donor makes a pledge. They get a video confirming their pledge and saying, hey, please give now, make that pledge a real gift. But the uploaded piece is going to be a little bit longer and a little bit more professionally produced. So what's interesting is even though that uploaded video has more care to it and might be a more well-produced video, the webcam video is actually watched to completion from start to finish a lot more frequently than the uploaded video. Both really good watch to completion rates. I mean, 61% and 47%. For online video, for those of you who are online communicators, 10% is a pretty good watch to completion rate. So those are both really good watch to completion rates. But the webcam has an edge. Let's take a look at the call to action clicks. This is a little bit more important because when they send that video, and a person receives it in an email, and they click on it, opens up a web page, there's the video right there. Beneath the video is a Give Now button, usually, because it's a pledge, right? We're trying to fulfill a pledge. So that's the call to action. And the percentage of people who click on that call to action from a webcam, rougher around the edges, more authentic video, that's 15%. The uploaded, typically more expensive, more highly produced, slightly longer video, that's only 10%. At mass, if we're talking about thousands and thousands of people, that can make a tremendous difference in fundraising numbers. And what we're seeing here is really that the message is what matters more than anything else. Now, I'll go on to show you why really well done video is still very important. Professionally produced video is still very important. We believe in that pretty firmly. But what I want to do more than anything else is encourage everybody on the line to think about how you can just get more video, period. Because regardless of what it is, as long as the viewer can see it, hear it, and understand it, video is solid gold in terms of fundraising content. So again, we really want to figure out how to do this. We want to figure out how to produce a lot more video, and to do so requires a plan and a commitment. So first of all, a long-term plan. What we do with our partners is map out at least a 6-month runway, try to look at more of a 12, maybe 18-month plan, and think about all those opportunities for content, and for video especially. Then it's a commitment to making the video happen. And that's the tricky part. I've talked to a lot of people who say, yeah, we just hired a new videographer, or we have someone in the communications team who can help us out. That's great. That's one of the sources for video. But you really need to ask yourself, do you have the resources to produce one new video per week? I'm talking 50 videos per year. Because if you do that, it's transformative in what it can do for donor acquisition and retention. But if you don't do that, if you say, yeah, we're going to produce a lot of video, or yes, we have someone who can do this, but eventually their schedule gets full, they have other priorities, you might not be able to make that happen. So the plan and the commitment to making sure that plan is followed through upon, that's what's key. Video is fantastic at showcasing people, and no matter what your cause, no matter what your mission is, really focus on the human stories, who your work impacts. In higher education, it's students. In healthcare, it's patients. In advocacy work, it might be a hunger relief organization, people who receive care through the work that you're doing. In some cases, I think about the only case where it might not be a person is all those animal-focused charities. Cute puppies, of course, are very powerful when it comes to online fundraising. So we want to make sure that, again, we're focused on the impact, but the impact should always have a human element to it. Video, and here's maybe the best news, really good video, like we saw with that authentic video stat from ThankView, doesn't have to break the bank. It does require a repositioning. It does require, in most cases, a new strategy and a new dedication to infrastructure, resources, and a focus on video. But it doesn't have to break the bank, especially if you're willing to rethink budgets just a bit. One of the other trends to look at, you may have noticed this yourselves, but the more wealth a person has, the more likely it is that person is active not just online, but on social media. This is a Fidelity investment study from several years back, and Fidelity was looking at their millionaire investors, and they found that 85% of those millionaire investors were active on at least one social media network. That's about the rate of the general population active on social media today. People with wealth, people who are millionaires, they tend to be online on social media. Some of them are very vocal, very active with their accounts. Some, you'd never know that they're active on social media, but they're paying attention, they're watching, because almost all of them have activity on at least one social media network or account, especially today. So it is very important that we have a strong presence in social media. We'll talk about how to do that in just a bit. Also, by the way, the median age of those surveyed here was 54. So it's not just all those millionaires under the age of 40 are active on social media. They all are, any age. Another stat that gets at the age and wealth, an Accenture study, a little bit more recent than the Fidelity study, found that 55% of high-income earners use mobile pay. To be high income means you make $250,000 a year or more. And that's compared to 40% of the general population and 52% of millennials. So these high income earners are very active going into a grocery store, and instead of using a cash or a credit card or a check, they pay with their mobile phone. And they do so at a higher rate than millennials. So what that basically means is someone who is in their 60s but is wealthy is more likely to use their mobile phone for transactions than someone who is under 40 but maybe isn't wealthy. Really interesting to consider when you look at some of these stats. And it's the reason why so many of our partners, the reason why our firm exists, and why so many of our partners over the past couple of years have been able to use the digital tactics, which we're about to talk about, to unlock huge 7-figure gifts, 6-figure gifts, big campaigns that at the same time build the annual fund as well. Here are a few examples. This dates back to my time when I was at Bentz Whaley Flessner, about 4 or 5 years ago now, working for World Vision United States, doing a major gift strategy for them. And in the process of doing the assessment, we stumbled across this campaign where a major donor took it upon herself, went to the World Vision website entirely on her own, and created this $60,000 campaign with a 24-hour goal. Now, we didn't know about this in advance. I don't believe World Vision knew about this in advance either. And it's a pretty good thing, because if we were running a crowdfunding program and we saw someone set up a $60,000 campaign that started at zero and was anticipating reaching that goal in 24 hours, we would very kindly and calmly call them up and say, that's wonderful. Let's drop a zero or two. No way that's going to be successful. But it's a darn good thing that nobody was able to do that, because Sherry Funk went ahead and created this campaign, launched it, and had a tremendous amount of success. She actually raised $61,000 in 24 hours. What's even more exciting for the organization is 12 donors made their first gifts ever to World Vision, all of them at least $1,000. Some $2,000, some $3,000, some $5,000, as you can see in the graphic here. But the reality is, people with wealth know other people with wealth. So when we put powerful crowdfunding communications and tools in their hands, they can really help feed a major gift donor pipeline or a leadership annual donor pipeline. And it's not unusual. This is when we took a step back a little further and worked with World Vision to take the, to see what the big picture says. And this is all of their Team World Vision data from, I think, maybe a 5-year span, it looks like, from about 2010 to 2015. And Team World Vision, it's walks, runs, cycling events, sort of those online fundraisers for doing some sort of physical activity. And 32,500 people did that in this time span. About 6,000 of them, 18%, are their middle, major, or mega donors. For most people, that's leadership, annual, giving, or major. So they're top donors, 18% of everyone who had a Team World Vision crowdfunding campaign. Even though they made up less than a fifth of everybody who had a crowdfunding campaign, they brought in 80% of all the dollars for this program. So it's not an anomaly, it's not unusual. When we find people who have deep capacity themselves, they often know other people in their networks who also have deep capacity. And when we put fundraising tools in their hands as peer-to-peer online fundraisers, they help us uncover a lot more wealth and help us build a major gift pipeline for the future. In higher education, we're starting to see a lot of examples of working with major gift donors to put seed gifts in place, to put match gifts in place, to really drive online campaigns. The Giving Day is pretty common. A lot of us are familiar with those. But in some cases, it can be a single donor event that can even outperform a Giving Day. This is Marquette. Marquette, I would love to say I was part of this. I wasn't. Got all this from a news release. But Marquette put out this $1 million donor challenge in 2016 and really built it around one single online ambassador. You see him pictured right there. His name is Marcus Lemonis, big supporter of Marquette. And what he did was, he wanted to make a significant gift, and he really wanted to be sort of the focal point of a campaign, which he was. A multi-channel campaign over the course of, I want to say, maybe 2 months. Not terribly long. And he put up this $300,000 gift. We could call it a match or a seed gift, in order to inspire more giving. The goal was to at least double that, get to 600,000. And because he was so active and such an advocate in putting his money on the line, and because he was well known, and because he had big social media followings, because he was not just a major gift donor, but also an online ambassador, the campaign was incredibly successful. And they actually raised more than $1 million, tripling his gift of $300,000. Even better yet, Mr. Lemonis had so much fun doing this, he came back the next year and quintupled his gift, $1.5 million match. And they were once again successful, bringing that up to a $3.2 million raised in the following year. Now, what I think is really interesting is I believe Marquette had a Giving Day, I want to say early 2018, a great Giving Day, strong numbers across the board, but it didn't really match what we had here in terms of total dollars, at least not what we can see from the outside. So here we have, an industry in higher education where the Giving Day has become a very common tool, and it should. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. But what's interesting is some of these solo individual donor campaigns, when they're built around a true online ambassador who also has major gift potential and is putting up a big gift or a match, can be just as effective and just as successful as a Giving Day. Here we have a healthcare example. Again, going back to BWF, I was working on this campaign back when I was at Bence Whaley Flessner for Miami Children's Hospital. Miami Children's Hospital had this billionaire who's very well connected, tons of activity on social media, so wealthy guy, also an online ambassador. And he was taking a trip through Europe at a certain point in time. He's going to try to take a 30-day trek through the Pyrenees Mountains on the El Camino de Santiago. If you're a fan of the Martin Sheen movie The Way, it's the same trip that took place in that film. And it just so happens that this donor, Mike Fernandez, is actually pretty good friends with Martin Sheen as well. So he wanted to do this walk through Europe to raise money and awareness for Miami Children's Hospital. A big donor himself, great network, deep network, but we needed a story, a narrative around him to really highlight his work and to raise money around it. And he would walk through Europe. He would take photos, selfies, videos, send them back to Miami Children's Hospital Foundation. The foundation would put them together, package them, send them out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, send out emails, give Mike Fernandez content that he can then share with his network, with his connections, and they were successful. $1.4 million raised total in just 30 days. A lot of it came from Mike Fernandez's personal connections, gifts of $50, $100, $250,000, not coming in online, of course. A lot of these gifts were secured offline, but they happened because to support this campaign. People saw the campaign. Some of it was secured just in advance of the campaign, some of it during the campaign. So it was an absolute major gifts program. Engine worked very well for the Children's Hospital. It also was an annual fund tool. 75% new donor acquisition, because this is a compelling story and it's going out on social media. It's reaching the masses via email. People are taking notice of this. People are inspired by it and they're giving by it. So we have incredible new donor acquisition, lots of small gift giving, growing the base, people feeling wonderful about the institution, growing their engagement and their connection via social media, and raising millions of dollars along the way. And the icing on the cake, the extra benefit is every time Mike Fernandez would go to one of these posts, he would click on the comments, scroll down, and see about a dozen people lavishing praise on him. So for someone who does like the spotlight, who does like to have your ego fed a little bit every now and again, a campaign like this is a wonderful stewardship tool, if nothing else. So moving away from the major gift trend and talking a little bit about phone and phone's downturn. You know, I want to be clear on the very front end here. I don't think the phone is dead, nor should it be. I think phone serves a very good purpose in a lot of ways. But you know, the reality is a lot of people who have big phone programs, a lot of fundraising operations who have big phone programs understand that they're paying more now for either the same results or worse results than they've had in previous years. And in some cases, they're just not even breaking even anymore. That obviously represents a problem. Now, in some cases, we've, again, in higher education, we all know about Stanford, but there are others now. Some of our partners have actually dropped phone entirely. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is keeping phone in some way, shape, or form, calling the same segments that always perform well over the phone, doing sell-a-pen so you can reach more people, doing stewardship calling. I spent some time working at Ruffalo Noah Levitz, and I know how well stewardship calling works. The impact it has on retention is incredible. It's like a 20% increase for the people you call and simply say thank you, not ask for anything, but call people simply to tell them thank you and that their gift matters. So there's places where the phone still works, but those big bloated phone programs where you're just calling everyone ad nauseum and spending a ton of money to do it, the ROI is not there. It doesn't work well for your relationships with the people who don't want to be called. It makes a lot more sense to pull that spend down and reallocate it somewhere else that makes a lot more sense. We, of course, at Groundwork Digital think it makes a lot of sense to take that reallocated spend and put it towards digital. And today we'll talk about ways in which you can do that. So first things first, content. We talked about video and content in general. This is a study that I think it's about 2 years old now, maybe not quite. The Abila donor loyalty study found that 75% of everybody they surveyed, all the donors they surveyed, said that they stopped donating because of poor, vague, or irrelevant content. Not enough of it. It's not clear. They don't understand how their gift is making the world a better place. They don't see where their dollars are going. They're not being communicated to effectively. 72% of donors say that. What is your retention rate? 20, 30%, 50%? I mean, imagine if you get this right, if you solve this problem, if you get content right, what is that going to do for your retention? Answer's obvious, right? It's going to improve it dramatically. So the question is, what does this look like? How do we build a more robust and effective content strategy? And how do we staff it? How do we resource it? And this is something that we are rolling out just this year. It's brand new. We have a few different partners who are trying this in some form or another. It works very well in higher education, and I think it works outside of higher ed too, and I'll show you examples for both. But it's the student content team, and it's a twist on the call center concept. It can work really well, I think, side by side with a call center, and it's one of the ways where if you're going to dial back the spend on the calling program a bit, you can put it towards this, and I think both the calling program and, of course, your digital channels will be much more effective. The idea is you're taking a team of about 4 to 6 people, students, volunteers, and what we're doing is finding those who have the personality, the charisma, and the ability to produce video, but not just produce video, but be a star in front of the camera as well, to become a known commodity that your donor base, your alumni base, your constituency, your supporters, your advocates, they'll get to know these individuals because they have big personalities and because you're going to produce one new video per week at least to get these personalities out in front of the world. They could have their own social media accounts. They could have official accounts that are branded with the student or volunteer content team, or, and this might be the best case scenario, most of the partners we're working with are going to go this route. They're going to enhance existing accounts. So if you have a foundation account or an alumni account or something like that for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, making these students, these individuals who are part of the content team, the stars of those channels is a really good idea. It makes those channels much more effective, much more personable, and it brings more people into the mix. If you have a large sports program, this is from University of Minnesota. I'm an alum and I'm a season ticket holder for football, and we find ourselves at hockey games every now and again too. And without asking, I would be able to tell you exactly who Allie Krings is, because she is the sideline reporter. She's the talent for games, in-game entertainment. She's always on the big screen. She's always doing contests or whatever, giving away t-shirts, talking to families, talking to kids. She's pretty present at most sporting events. And she's got a great personality for it. She's a really good communicator, being in front of the camera and doing a really good job with that. This is kind of what we're going for, because among Gopher season ticket holders, of which there's tens of thousands of them, most of them would know Allie Krings by name. And here's the thing. If there's a fundraising drive, if there's a multi-channel appeal taking place, and you get an email or a text message from Allie Krings and you're one of those Gopher fans, you are absolutely going to open it. There's a study from Blackbaud that looks at the conversion rates on emails that are sent from online ambassadors. And what they found is when an online ambassador sends an email, 1 out of every 4 people who receive that email will make a gift, not open it, convert, make a gift. Anybody who does email knows 25% is a pretty good open rate. 25% is an otherworldly conversion rate. But if you send from a known name, an online ambassador, someone that the person doesn't just recognize, but actually feels like they know them a bit, that dramatically increases the gift conversion. Now, take that exact same email and make one change. Take the person's name out as a sender and instead put the institution or foundation or organization's name in the sender field. The conversion rate plummets from 25% to 0.08%. We get 1 in 4 making a gift versus 1 in 1,250 making a gift. These online ambassador emails are 312 times more effective than the exact same email, same subject, same content, same call to action, the exact same email when it comes from an online ambassador. So it almost makes you wonder why we would ever send an email that doesn't come from a known name. Part of the problem is finding those known names, right? Student content team or volunteer content team does that for you. You want to make this a paid position. You want to keep these individuals around, hopefully for 2 or 3 years if it's a college or school like that. If you're a nonprofit organization, this might be a staff position, a couple of staff people you elevate to this role. But the idea is developing these philanthropy-based personalities over time that people connect with, so that first of all, when the content goes out on social media, people are much more actively engaging with it. But beyond that, email, staying above the fray in email. We talked about this in the promotional materials for this webinar. It's such a crowded space. I mean, think about Giving Tuesday. Think about December 31st. How many emails did you receive from nonprofit organizations, all saying essentially the same thing? Nice, catchy subject lines, a good call to action, so on and so forth. But there's just so much now. The only way really to rise above that, 2 ways, I guess. One is through smart, individualized content through automation, but even more so is actually sending an email from someone that the person knows and recognizes. Student content team allows you to build those personalities and do that. With students, we're adding personalized video that gets noticed, leads to giving, gets to open rates, gets to click-throughs, gets to conversion rates. We're keeping our mission front and center. And again, even beyond higher education, this works really well. Anytime we have people who are really the face of an organization and can deliver that message effectively, that's a huge win. And we can do that with video over time. And this is why, especially in higher ed, we're calling this the new version, a new twist on the call center. Because one of the reasons why phone has worked so well over the decades, and one of the reasons why it still works pretty well within certain segments, is some people like getting those calls. They enjoy hearing from students on campus because it brings them back to campus. They can ask about the dorm that they stayed in, or they can ask about the new stadium, or they can ask about a professor if they're still there, and are they still as awesome as they used to be. The student content team through video and through social media is doing essentially the same thing, but with a modern twist. We do believe this is an incredibly important development in fundraising communication. We know it's going to drive giving, and we think if you are rebalancing a phone program, this is something you should really seriously consider, is making sure you have an out version of the student content team in place. And again, there are so many ways we can do this outside of higher education. If you have very engaged volunteers, one of the most important parts about this content team role is that you have someone who's part of it for quite some time. And this is where, outside of the higher education space, if you're in healthcare or if you're in advocacy and you have someone who's been a longtime volunteer and who has the charisma to get in front of a camera, this might even work better because you might be able to keep them around for the next 10 years. And they can become very well-known personalities on your social media accounts and within your constituency. So well-connected volunteers, online ambassadors, they can make for fantastic content team members. Your staff is such an underutilized resource when it comes to video. It's so easy to produce effective video now. We saw the stats about authentic video. You know, whether you're doing professional video or whether you're relying on staff who have some video skills themselves, this is a group to turn to for a content team that can drive a lot of success very effectively for you. And again, hopefully they'll be with you for some time, so you can create those personalities and those relationships with your constituents that last for quite a while. Again, all it takes is a smartphone and someone who has the willingness to do some experimentation with video, and you can have a lot of effective, very democratized, very grassroots type video content, just to make sure that we're giving our team the tools that they need. So providing training is a really good idea. You know, having a half-day video production boot camp for everybody. We do them all the time, and they're a blast. They're so much fun because it's a fun skill to know, even outside of your professional development. It's fun to be able to play around with video for you know, some people who have kind of that creative engine inside of them. It's a blast. It's not even more work. It's a really new twist on the job that makes the job that much better for them. And I think if you can provide training and reward them and assign them really fun tasks, it actually makes their job more rewarding. So it works both ways. I mean, employees who can be effective videographers are much more valuable to an organization. But I think, you know, for the organization, having employees who really enjoy their job and have a lot of creative fun with that job, I mean, that works as well too. So don't hesitate to experiment, get out there, have some fun, play around with authentic video because it does work for fundraising. All right, let's shift towards the big gift side of things and talk about how we're securing some massive gifts as a result of online campaigns. First things first, we saw the stats. It's very important to remember that the more wealth a person has, the more active they are online, the more they're paying attention to what you're doing on sites like Facebook and Twitter and social media. And what we've been doing with a lot of our partners are digital solicitation strategies or digitally enhanced solicitation strategies. Starts in prospect development, and we use technology, we use natural observations, organic screening of social media sites and whatnot to add digital data to portfolios, to surface those prospects who maybe we can unlock some giving potential through an online campaign because they really get online and have demonstrated that by some of the data. Or there might be a case where we discover that a person is very, very interested in one particular facet of the work that we're doing because they've said so with their Facebook activity, because they've been liking posts about one particular thing from our organization for quite some time. So it starts there. We try to find people who have high social media influence scores. Best case scenario is someone like that Marcus Lemonis or the Mike Fernandez that we saw earlier, or Sherry Funk from World Vision, where we have someone who has capacity, but also has a lot of online influence, a big social media network, a big online network. They're fairly rare, but when you find them and work with them, the potential is not just incredible for securing more gifts from them because they feel more involved, more active, but looking at their networks and finding more wealth in their networks as well. Understanding what topics interest them, understanding which networks they're active on, knowing all of these things, and then adding them to the profiles of the prospects that we have, and then bringing everybody together, bringing in the development officers, the gift officers, bringing in digital strategists who really understand what works well in the online space. One of the most exciting parts about the work that we've been doing with almost every one of our partners from across industries is how we've brought different teams together, different teams from marketing and communications, development, annual giving, the major gifts program, all should be working together. We know that, but it's hard to find the right projects to bring everybody together in a mutually beneficial way. We're seeing this through these campaigns because these campaigns, They do well for social media. It's great content for social media, very engaging. You can grow a social media base around these. So communications and marketing loves it. Annual giving loves it because they're annual giving campaigns. I mean, most of these are matches and challenges. What we're really trying to do is drive a lot of small gifts. And then, of course, major gifts loves it because major gifts now, they have a new excuse to go talk to donors about something entirely new and exciting and innovative that a certain segment of their prospects are all about. So it works really well when we can bring everybody together and plan these campaigns. Talk about whether the prospects are a good fit for matches and challenges, if maybe they would be someone who could be the focal point of a large gift campaign, if they'd even just be online ambassadors. If you can see here in the most recent screen grab that popped up, this is a post from a gift officer at the University of Minnesota. And at the very bottom, there's a comment from Miss Nancy Lindahl. Nancy Lindahl is co-chair of a $4 billion campaign at the University of Minnesota right now. And one of the ways the University of Minnesota most frequently hears from Miss Lindahl is through the comments on a Facebook post like this. Because she's active, because she's innovative, because she's paying attention where we know people with capacity and well, they're paying attention on social media, on Facebook. So for some of these individuals, it's just another volunteer opportunity, another way to feel connected to the organization and go beyond the big gifts that they're already giving. And then we build those campaigns. And again, this is where we have sort of a cross-departmental effort that makes some of these big things happen through things like crowdfunding, giving days, single donor online campaigns. One of my favorite stories, I just love bragging about the University of Minnesota. I apologize. Alma mater, go Gophers. Our football team might actually be becoming something worthwhile. So I'm especially excited now, but really excited about this campaign too. This is something that the University of Minnesota team did almost a year ago now around the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 52 was in Minneapolis. And Justin Timberlake was performing, and he actually asked the marching band to perform with him during the halftime show, which is great. Definitely something you want to leverage, especially since we were looking at the marching band as one of the potential opportunities for online major gift fundraising. Problem is, the Super Bowl is shrouded in secrecy. The halftime show is shrouded in secrecy. So we didn't know about the band performing until about a week before it actually took place, which, had we not done any of this work in advance, had we not have done major gift officer workshops, had we not have worked with some gift officers to put some planning in place, had those gift officers not talked about some concepts like this with their prospects, we still wouldn't have been able to pull it off. But all of those things did happen. We did do all that blocking and tackling. We've been working on it for about a year at that point, and some gift officers were having some really good conversations with their donors. So what ended up happening was we had a prospect who gives, I think, about 25 a year, decide that they want to move that up a bit and give $100,000 for this campaign because they were so excited by it. But again, they weren't blindsided by it. The gift officer understood this tactic of agile fundraising, which, just like agile marketing is marketing of the moment, jumping into current events and whatnot. Agile fundraising is the same thing. And the gift officer was able to talk with their prospects in advance of anything ever happening and basically say, look, something is going to happen. It's going to be exciting when it does. If you give us a big gift, that can help us raise a lot more money. Now, again, a digitally active prospect will understand this. They'll get this, and not only will they understand it, but they'll be really excited by it, by the novelty of it, by the innovative approach to it. And they made a big gift. So it went from $25,000 to $100,000. Giving site spun up quickly. It's a crowdfunding platform. Most of us who have crowdfunding platforms can build something like this in 20 minutes. And then, of course, there was a marketing and communication plan. Interesting, too, multi-channel marketing and communication plan. 90% of everything that was raised as part of this campaign, and the small gifts, of course, we had that one big gift to launch it, but 90% of the small gifts came in directly through online, but 10% still came through the phone program. And I'm sure it was one of those cases where this coordinated calling program, again, one great use of the phone, one way you can take a smaller phone program, make it more targeted and more effective, is supporting this big current events driven push on a crowdfunding campaign. I'm sure we had a few more phone gifts because of the digital piece, and I'll bet we had a few more gifts online because of the phone piece. Both of them working together, all boats rise to the tide. And the tide was pretty high. 180, I think almost $190,000 actually was raised in the end. That includes $100,000 seed gift from the major gift donor, but then almost $90,000 in small gifts. Almost 700 donors from all units across campus came together. Tons of first-time donor activity, and not just first-time small gift donor activity, but 12 new major gift prospects gave to this campaign, plus about 100 people who went to leadership annual giving screening as a result. A tremendous success. Again, this is an example where we have, let's say you take a couple $100,000 off of your phone program, you put it towards digital. This is how just one campaign can pretty much pay for that for you. And there's a lot more going on at the University of Minnesota beyond that in digital as well. So it makes a lot of sense to rebalance for some of the success. Back to video. Video is great for engaging every donor at every level, and especially with major gift donors. If you've got a robust video plan in place and you can do personalized videos to engage donors, personalized microsites. This is a faux example of a real campaign from Emory. Emory University is using these digital microsites for major gift donors. And again, this is not a real example. We didn't want, for donor confidentiality, we didn't want to use the real example. But I can tell you that the real examples so far are working really well. And the idea is you produce a microsite, could be most likely for stewardship, to thank a donor, to show them the impact of their work, but perhaps also as a way to find your way into another donor community. For example, let's say you have a donor who gives to a big gift to a certain area, or it could be a cultivation tool as well. And you have a message from the president, from your executive director, you have volunteers, you have students, and instead of having static content, you have video, because we know video works so incredibly well at moving people towards a gift. We can produce these, we can produce, dozens of these every year for some of our top prospects to either cultivate, solicit, or steward them. And then they become online ambassadors because they love it. So if you have people who are very active on social media and are also major donors or prospects, putting this in their hands is fantastic, because they're going to share it far and wide, and then their network's going to see it, and then their employers are going to see it. That was one of the tactics here for Emory, was getting into a corporate environment. Worked really well. Donor loved it, thought it was fantastic, and then shared it with all of her colleagues across a corporate environment. So it really helped move in that corporate direction as well. But again, it comes back down to video content. Another very good reason to have a student content team, some of those known charismatic video stars who can really have that content stand out. So last but not least, I do want to talk a little bit about technology, because it's something that, especially in the 2 years since we've launched Groundwork Digital, we realize is sorely lacking, especially in the higher ed space, but across all of nonprofit work. Even just for basic email, it's hard to find the right set of tools. And the problem is, we have some really good CRMs on one side, and we've got some really good giving day, crowdfunding, and ambassador tools off in another corner. And then the other tip of the triangle, we've got some amazing email automated marketing platforms. But it's hard, and in fact, I don't think, because we've been looking pretty hard, it's hard to find one company that does all of those things. It's very hard to find one company that even does two of those three things. So what you really have to do is make a commitment to having, at this point in time at least, a few different vendors doing this for you, understanding that there might be some issues with data transfer, that there might be a little bit more of an increased workload when it comes to streamlining data with your CRM from an online giving tool. But here's the thing, do you want to have an easy flow for 5 gifts, or do you want to work a little bit harder to process 500 gifts? Because that's the difference. I mean, the tools that are out there in terms of automated marketing are incredible. The things that they can do, the headaches they can alleviate, it's worth whatever back-end process you need to put in place to make it happen. And we believe that more now than ever, especially from our experience over the past year and what we've seen in some of the tools that are out there. You can do things like create automated constituent journeys, drip marketing, so if, for example, you see someone who is going to a specific area of your website and they visited that one particular area, that one page, subdomain, 5 different times in the past 2 weeks. First of all, you need to talk to the person about whatever it is that they're visiting. You need to have a conversation with them. And you can do that, with a real person through a gift officer, or you can do it in mass and automatically through automation. You can have a series of rules that triggers a certain activity because the person is visiting a website, and then they get sent down this long trail of email messaging, which leads them to an outcome, which is a meeting, a gift, and a volunteer event, whatever it might be. All of that can be done in real time and automated in mass over thousands of different records at once. You can do predictive modeling on top of that. You can email only to those who are close to making a gift because you've seen their social media activity and their web activity and their previous giving activity, and it tells you they're pretty likely going to do this one thing, which again can be done manually if you have 10,000 hours every day, or you can rely on technology to do it for you and have a lot of success. I mean, think about the email issues that so many of us face. We have donors who get 5 different emails on the giving day from 5 different departments because they've given to 5 different departments over the past 3 years. And how do you say, well, we're not going to send from that department because we just got to keep the number down? So you end up sending a lot of email to your constituents, and sometimes you hear complaints about that. And I would always err on sending more than less. Or you can have sophisticated automated technology using machine learning to really understand what matters most to those donors and to package unique individual sends. So instead of sending 4 emails from 4 departments, you had the technology find those 4 different funds that the donor would likely support and neatly package that into just 1 email to be sent on the giving day. Again, you could find a way to do that individually for 35,000 different records, or you could have technology do it all for you. This is here. It's working now in the for-profit world. It's working now for some nonprofits as well. The key is finding a way to make it work. Even for the major gifts program, we're seeing a lot of machine learning and automation in this space as well. And it's not just an annual fund thing. This can help us really service those best prospects, those warm prospects, those who are ready to give right now because of what we're seeing from social media. It just requires the tools to be able to do this. And I want to be really clear, Groundwork Digital is a consulting services company. We do not own any technology, nor do we have any vested interest in any technology. I'm simply suggesting this because I've seen what happens when we don't have the right tools. We really do want to try to find the right tools to make this happen because the end results are incredible. We talked about for major gifts, some of you may have EverTrue. We've worked with Attentively for a few different partners of ours in the past, and we'll be working with EverTrue on a few in the future. Really good tools out there, and just to give you a sense of what's possible. This is a case study. I think I might even pulled off the EverTrue site. I'm not sure, but a University of Buffalo gift officer. They go out on the road. Inevitably, they have maybe a cancellation or just a gap in between meetings, and they want to try to fill that time, be as productive as they can when they're out in a certain city. So they look up EverTrue, and they find who in that geographic radius near them has recently been really active on Facebook, who's been liking a lot of different posts on different Facebook pages from the institution. And when they do that, then they find those people who maybe are feeling pretty warm, pretty excited about one particular aspect of the University of Buffalo, and that happened in this case. Gift officer found somebody who not only was very active on Facebook, but was actively redoing their estate. Now, this is pretty much a cold prospect looked up out of the blue. Despite that, they made a 7-figure gift pretty much on the spot from that conversation, directly a result of the gift officer looking at the activity in EverTrue to see who's active on Facebook. And it really is interesting. We're getting into this with a few of our partners right now, and it's amazing. I mean, there are some Facebook users, some people in the database and the CRM who have literally liked posts on a university's Facebook pages 10,000 times. It's insane to think that, but it's true. And if you've got someone who's doing that, that tells you so much. First of all, it tells you what they're interested in, tells you what they're interested in right now. It also tells you they are very active on social media, and they might have a pretty big following and also be a great online ambassador in addition to being a great donor. So there's a lot to do here. There's a lot to do in terms of cleaning things up. You need clean data. You need a CRM that ideally plays well. I mean, best case scenario, everything can kind of flow straight from an email to a gift form into a CRM. I just am being realistic, and I know how difficult that is for some institutions, especially those that have long-term contracts or just aren't ready to move away from a certain CRM. I mean, at a very high level, my advice to you is do whatever it takes to get some of these really powerful donor-facing tools in your shop right now. It's daunting, it's a lot, but it truly is essential for modern fundraising programs that don't want to get left behind. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the questions tab on the webinar over here. So if you have a question, go ahead, type it in now. We'll get to it in just a second. We'll have a few come in. I'm going to also welcome my colleague, Mariana Bunker. She's new to the firm as a couple of weeks ago, and she's going to get to some of those questions in just a second. So again, the questions field, please type them in. Let us know what's on your mind. What can we answer? What can we help you with today? And we'll get to those questions in just a second. But to wrap up, what do we want to do next? Number one, produce more video content. I mean, even with automation, that only works if you have a lot of content, a lot of things to send people. It's great if you have an email platform that can create 1,000 different emails for 100,000 different people. But if you only have one piece of content, they're all still going to get the same piece of content. So you really have to focus on getting a lot more video, producing some of that with a professional touch. And then I think also activating your staff, activating volunteers, students, whoever you have who can produce video for you. More of it is the key. Our goal for all of our partners is at least one new video per week. Absolutely think about digital for major gifts. We're seeing it work so tremendously well. Why wouldn't you want to open up new segments? why wouldn't you want a whole new mechanism that can excite a cold prospect and move them towards a big gift and feed your prospect portfolios with a lot of new prospects as a result of that major gift donor being out there and in the space? You may have seen it. We've certainly seen it where when there's a matching campaign or some really exciting, vibrant campaign online and a major gift donor is the focal point of that campaign, other major gift donors tend to take notice and get active themselves. Rebalance resources, and this again gets back to all of your traditional channels. You know, the one that I keep picking on is phone, only because it's what we most typically hear from our partners. When someone, you know, calls us up and we start talking about an engagement, you know, a lot of times what they say is, I mean, so frequently what they say is, you know, we downsized our phone, we brought it in house, we're spending a little bit less, but we're scared because we're probably going to lose a few donors and a few dollars. We have to bring those back. Can digital do that? And the answer is absolutely. So, you know, think about rebalancing those resources and really modernizing your program without leaving any behind if you can. You know, if you can keep phone in some capacity, that's best case scenario, but really think about, you know, the spend overall and what you're doing, and get ready for technology. I mean, really get ready for all that technology can do for you. And you can take baby steps in this direction. So let's say if you're on email and you're on a very poor performing program right now, even shifting to something as simple and low cost as Emma or MailChimp, you know, for a few $100s a month, maybe $1,000 a month, Campaign Monitor, HubSpot, something like that. You can do so much more than what you're doing right now. And you can take open rates from 15, 18% and move them up to 25, 30%. Now, you know, over 100,000 records, that's a very significantly different looking email program when you're getting open rates that are 10 percentage points higher. And in a lot of cases, it's really just a matter of changing up the technology and using the better, or even in some cases, the best case solution for what's out there. So that's what we have for you today. I'll leave this up as we take some questions. First thing I want to do, again, is welcome my colleague, Mariana. Mariana, can you hear me?